Morphin time! Dragon Sword!
Mastodon!
Pterodactyl!
Triceratops!
Saber-tooth tiger!
Tyrannosaurus!
Power Rangers. To say this show was the show that formed the basis of my personality as a child, and was my absolute favourite show, doesn't even begin to describe just how much I loved it. And today, I'm going to be talking about why it's the greatest terrible show of all time. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Berk, and that's right. Today I'm talking about the granddaddy of Asian adapted media, the big papa of otaku making, the main man at showing weebs the light outside of Dragon Ball. Today we are talking about Saban's Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, as well as the many spin-off series it birthed, and all the films that the franchise has made. For better or worse. So grab your morphers and have your Zord at the ready. It's gonna be a busy day. I am what you could call a Power Rangers veteran. I was born during the 6th season of the show, Power Rangers in Space, but actively watched primarily Mighty Morphin, Time Force, and Wild Force eras, and stopped around the time of the 13th season, Power Rangers SPD. But I watched both feature films that had come out prior to my birth, an obscene amount of times, because they were two of the main VHSs, yes I am that old, I had growing up. I actually remember being a really little kid, telling my mum and dad that I was going to grow up to be the next Red Ranger while wearing my Time Force Red Ranger outfit. A fact my mother loves to bring up whenever Power Rangers is even slightly referenceable when I see her. And being certain it was as real a job as being a chef or a firefighter. Yeah, to say I was kind of a dumb kid is a pretty drastic understatement. But I grew up adoring these shows with my whole heart, and have so many fond memories of them. So, recently I went back and rewatched Mighty Morphin for the first time in a very long time, and I was not disappointed. But not at all in the way I expected. This show is such a shit show of weird and confusing storytelling, super weird camera work, and, well, just overall hammy acting, and it is glorious. Before we get into all that, however, let's take a look at the history of my most beloved, terrible show, shall we? Ladies and gentlemen, say it with me now. It's history time! You know, like the morphin, I'll just get to the thing. Power Rangers was brought to us by the mad bastards at Saban Entertainment and the Toei Company, which means anything that I show in this video will 100% get it claimed. Saban are also the ones responsible for bringing us the Digimon movie, something I have also done a video on right here on the channel, so if you haven't yet, go check that one out. But just for a little background on our darling Saban, some of their other shows include Big Bad Beetleborgs, VR Troopers, and Masked Rider. Now, you may notice a bit of a theme here, that being that all of these shows are westernizations of Japanese shows. BBB is based on Juko B Fighter, VR Troopers are based on Metal Heroes, and Masked Rider is based on Kamen Rider Black RX. And the focus of today's video is in fact no different, because Power Rangers is actually based off the show Super Sentai. Now you may be wondering, in what way are these shows based off of these Japanese shows? Well, unlike things like Pokemon, for example, that are full redubs of the Japanese show, hence why we have Brock's amazingly legendary Jelly Donuts, and Wipeout, that was just a straight-up rip-off of Takeshi's Castle and Sasuke, something that actually got the creators of Wipeout sued. Power Rangers took a rather unique approach. See, for Power Rangers, Saban decided to go with a bit of a hybrid of the two. just without all the legal issues that the second one entailed. You'll notice that whenever the Rangers are in a fight scene or in Ranger mode for extended periods of time, that the background looks decidedly less Californian and a lot more, shall we say, Inaka. This is because for any fight, any moment of the Zords on screen, any time of the Rangers outside the command center and in costume, it's actually footage of the Japanese version of the show being used and is simply redubbed by the Western actors. Hence why the cityscapes have noticeably more skyscrapers, the foliage is completely different to California, and the Black Ranger still has all his fingers. Yeah, that's one of those real weird things that, thanks to the advent of HD television, you just kinda notice on a rewatch. And, yeah, you can never unsee it. It's even there on his morph animation. There's 3 fingers above the morpher. It's, yeah, it's strange to notice. And it's not just the first season that did this. Every single season has used footage from Super Sentai for their fight scenes. The first and, well, really only projects that were made by Saban, because we won't be talking about this car crash until later, to use zero footage from Japan, was the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie, and the subsequent movie, Power Rangers Turbo. But now we've had a bit of a history lesson, let's talk about the actual contents of the show, and, well, to be honest with you, this is all just a big ploy for me to be able to gush over how much I love this show. This show is brilliantly insane, and pure Japanese weirdness at its finest. From its Monster of the Week approach, the designs of each monster, and, well, moreover, the main villains of the show, to the new weird and wacky hijinks that Rita forces on the Rangers week to week, and whatever my personal favorite characters, Bulk and Skull, happen to be getting up to just the overall feeling of togetherness the Rangers always have. Even when new people are introduced to the team, the feeling of togetherness never leaves. That last part is actually something I want to focus on for a moment too. Because of how long the show has been going on, obviously the show has had to change cast multiple times, with the first of those switches happening back in the middle of Season 2, with the introduction of a new Red, Black, and Yellow Ranger, including a very youthful Johnny Young Bosch taking on the role of Adam, the new Black Ranger, and sticking with the show for a good long while before himself moving on to greener and, well, far more plentiful pastures. By the way, realizing Johnny Young Bosch was in this show for as long as he was blew my mind, because, I mean, for me personally, he has to be a top 3 anime voice actor. More specifically, for me, he voices one of my all-time favorite anime protagonists, Yu Narukami, from Persona 4 The Animation. I mean, hell, he's in the Power Rangers movie, for crying out loud. Both of them. This man's career started hot out the gates. But to get back on track, the show will tend to refresh the cast every new season at the very least, because each new season tends to have a new gimmick that it follows, as you can see behind me, as well as replacing the odd ranger here and there. Each new season guarantees new rangers, new guides for the group, new morphers and morphing animations, new big bads to fight, as well as all new Zord and Megazord designs. The new seasons always have a fresh viewing experience, even if that viewing experience did kind of suck after a while. But we'll talk about those kind of issues later on in the video. In rewatching the show, I was reminded of just how hammy and over-the-top the acting was at times. And weirdly, it's not from the people you would expect. For example, let's take a look at this scene for a moment, shall we?
You okay, Tommy?
What's happening to me?
You're no longer under Rita's power.
My head's spinning.
You'll be okay, man.
What have I done?
What you did under Rita's influence. You own the power now.
Fight by our side and we can defeat Rita. After everything that's happened? Tommy, we need you.
Yep. Yeah, you see how weird and robotic the acting is? It's not that these actors are bad actors, because they actually have some really well-acted scenes at other points in the franchise. But it's almost like they're reading their lines for the first time off of a cue card that's just off screen. And unfortunately, this isn't an issue that ever really went away the majority of the show. Be it because the show is made for kids, so the information does kind of have to be yelled at times for them to hear it, or because the actors in the show tend to have relatively little experience prior to getting the roles. Aside from maybe Bulk and Skull, who are actually weirdly natural despite playing the comedic foils, the majority of the acting from the newer cast, it's just a bit bad. Unless it's in Ranger mode, then it's some of the memeiest and most amazing overacting possible. I mean, come on. Would you call this a natural line delivery?
Red is the perfect one. Black is the brooding bad boy. Green is the clown, and yellow, well, she's the girl. So what are you supposed to be?
I'm Scottish!
And don't worry, I'm not going to get into the controversy surrounding the show. After all, we'd have to practically turn this into a true crime channel just to fully cover some of it. But without going into it too much, this show had no small amount of issues behind the scenes, with homophobia and dangerous work environments just being the very, very unfortunate tip of this iceberg. Getting back to the contents of the show. At large, this show just kicked ass the majority of the 90s and 2000s. I mean, whether you were watching Mighty Morphin, Alien, Zeo, Turbo, Space, Lost Galaxy, Lightspeed Rescue, Time Force, the best in the franchise, Wild Force, Ninja Storm, Dino Thunder, SPD, there was never really a dud series in that time span. But then in the mid-2000s, something quite heavily changed, and it ended up affecting the majority of kids' TV shows. And I honestly couldn't tell you what it was. But interest suddenly started to just drop. And from the 14th season Mystic Force onward, it just kept falling. It never really recaptured that magic it once had. I mean, it went from being referenced in Friends and The Simpsons to barely even appearing on toy shop shelves. Which, by the way, was the true measure of a kids' show success for years. And, in my opinion, it's something that deeply sucks. Because I think some of the later series actually have some genuinely interesting concepts and villains that should have been seen. I mean, just look at Super Mega Force. An entire show based around having the ability to morph into any ranger in the history of the franchise. It actually takes arguably the best episode ever made, the one-off special episode called Forever Red, that brought as many of the former Red Rangers together as they could, and turns that idea up to 11, with just being able to show any Ranger team from the history of the show fight again. It's such a clever concept that hits the perfect nostalgia nail on the head, and it doesn't get near enough interest in my opinion. But even though the show has gone on for, 30 years at this point, the interest has remained relatively low in the franchise from a younger generation for quite a long time now. Then came the fateful day that they tried recapturing that interest in the series in the most horrendous way. Power Rangers here was a movie that was released in 2017, and was a really weird attempted nostalgia cash-in that just did not work. It was a very misguided attempt at a reboot, from changing the origins of the group, from a number of model teenagers who helped their community, to a bunch of delinquents who had detention on the same day, completely changing the majority of their backgrounds, giving us overly intense Rita Repulsa with a backstory that rivals Avatar, and Blobby Goldar, as well as some really, really clunky and awkward, vague approximations of dinosaurs in the form of their Zords, and, well, probably one of the worst Megazords ever conceived. Oh no. They really dragged poor Bryan Cranston and Bill Hader into this, didn't they? Guys, what happened? Brian, did the Breaking Bad checks run out? You didn't have to do this to yourself, man! I think the major flaw in this film was, rather than give us that beautiful, corny, Japanesey goodness, they made it way too serious and just made it way too real. Don't get me wrong, we always wanted a serious R-rated Power Rangers. But that's because the juxtaposition of dark and harrowing against the obscenely colourful outfits and goofy-looking Zords would have made for such an interesting dynamic. I mean, imagine Alpha and Zordon planning a full-scale nuclear assault on Rita as it cuts to her torturing one of the Rangers for information. It would be so gnarly and amazing to watch. It's actually something we almost saw with The Legend of the White Dragon movie, that the actor who played Tommy, Jason David Frank, had a huge hand in making. With the original concept starting from a Kickstarter all the way back in 2019, that actually got some of the former Rangers back on board, including the aforementioned Johnny Young Bosch. But unfortunately, due to Jason's heartbreaking passing in 2022, that came after he sadly lost his battle with his mental demons, it's a project I don't think we'll ever get to see now. Which is a shame, because we won't get to enjoy the final work of an amazing human that loved the franchise as much as he did. He was a true example of a Power Ranger through and through. But what we can do is relive the amazing moments he did have on the silver screen. And that means I can't finish this video without mentioning the two true Power Rangers movies that came out back in the day. Because, well, they were just amazing. The first one just might be the most perfect movie the series could have asked for. A fun villain in the legendary Ivan Ooze. All new Zords. A fun plot of the Rangers losing their powers and having to become a new team to defeat Ivan. And not as much awful green screen as the new movie. Don't get me wrong. It's still there. This movie still has terrible green screen. Unfortunately, that's one of the main parts of the movie that did not age so well. Oh, and remember what I said earlier about the reboot movie having one of the worst Megazords ever conceived? Well, this movie may actually take that prize, unfortunately. Plus, it commits the cardinal sin, in my opinion, of having nowhere near as much bulk and skull as it should have. At points in the movie, just being kind of background actors that are not doing anything especially bulk and scully. Aside from the opening of them parachuting in with the rest of the Rangers and missing entirely and hitting the dig site, and then telling a big fake story at the end to make themselves seem like they helped save the day, for the majority of the movie, they're just kind of there. Which sucked, because, like I said earlier, they were always a personal favourite of mine to see in the show. Lucky for me, however, and any of my fellow bulk and skullheads out there, they do appear in the Turbo movie quite heavily, and actually have a pretty significant part of the B-plot that follow the original Red and Pink Ranger, which is amazingly weird, including a full section where they have their memories wiped and think they're German and Spanish now? For some reason? It does not, however, make up for the very, very strange choice to include a family of overgrown Furbies that are vital to the progress of the story. Which, look, I get it. It's Power Rangers. They encounter aliens from time to time, but why is this the alien they need to stop a literal demon from taking over the world. Were all the cool ones busy taking a summer vacation or something? Why is this in the movie? And why do they sound so damn weird? Well, I suppose it's just another star in the constellation of reasons why this franchise is so fantastically, brilliantly stupid, but I can't help but love it. At the end of the day, this show was probably one of the greatest kid shows ever created. It focused on teamwork, trust, inclusivity, friendship, highlighting your own individual strengths in the group environment, as well as being able to take on challenges on your own. It was loud, it was proud, it was wacky, it was dumb, and it was just amazing. It's truly a product of its time, and it's woven into the very fabric of 90s children. And honestly, I wish a lot more kids gave a crap about it in the modern day. Instead, they care about Fortnite, Skibbity Toilet, and these snake oil salesmen. Is this comedy in the new age? Am I old? Every day we stray further from God, don't we? But on that relatively depressing note, I'm gonna leave it there. Thank you so much for watching this video. Like I said, it's just a reason for me to gush about this franchise I love so much. If this video does well, and you want me to, I'll do a video on my personal favorite series of the show. And I'd love to hear your favorites. Are you a fellow OG fan? Perhaps a Mystic Force defender? Or maybe this is your first experience hearing about the franchise somehow. Either way, let me know in that comment section down below. But if you're new here and haven't yet, please consider using the power of the grid to morph into a subscriber by hitting that big ol' red button down below. And call in your Zord by hitting the thumbs up, and then hit that bell to get the Mega Zord sequence started with all your fellow bell-dinging rangers. I have been Berk the Gaijin as always, and remember, tell your friends, tell your family, tell a stranger on the train, and anyone who will listen, that this is where you'll find all the freshest of dumb content. And I hope wherever you are in the world, you are having a sugoi morning, afternoon, or evening, or generally one hell of a day. And I will see you next year. Sayonara. Happy New Year. Bye-bye.